Hello everyone, and welcome back to another week of Jumpstart. So this week we read a very exciting book by a very familiar friend. Our friend is Ezra Jack Keats, and he's written a lot of books for us in Jumpstart so far, but this book was a very, very exciting book called Dreams. So if you remember, this is the storybook that we read this week. You just read this book with Miss Daphne, so hopefully you enjoyed reading that. But today, I wanted to talk a little bit more about a very important part of the story. So, when I think about the story, we know that there's Roberto, and he's having a little bit of a hard time falling asleep at night. And because he is not being able to sleep, he looks out of his window, and he sees a very surprising and very startling scene. He sees the fact that there's a stray dog trying to corner and trap Archie's cat. Isn't that shocking? I would be so scared if I was the cat. I would be super scared. And in that moment, Roberto is thinking, what can I do to help? Is there anything that I can do to help Archie's cat? And in that moment, he does something, and something is created to scare the dog off. Anyone remember what scared the dog away? I think that is a great guess. So the thing that scared the dog away and freed Archie's cat was a shadow. So Roberto pushed off this little paper mouse off of the windowsill, and that paper mouse, as it was falling, it created this very big shadow on the wall. And that is why the dog got very, very scared of the shadow. As you can see here, the dog gets so scared it runs away because the shadow is so big. And I think the dog thought that the shadow was another animal, like a really, really big animal, but actually it was just a shadow. So I want to talk about what shadows are, how shadows are made today, but before I can talk about what they are, I wanted to introduce a few vocabulary terms that I think will be very, very helpful in our discussion. So the words that I want to introduce to you all are words that help describe how much light can pass through an object. And the three words that I have for you today are opaque, transparent, and translucent. So those three words describe how much light passes through an object. So my first example is this little plushie. So I have this little plushie, and this is an example of an opaque object. So this plushie does not let any light pass through it. And we know that because you cannot see through this plushie. So if you cannot see what's behind a plushie, or an object, you also can assume that there is no light that can pass through it. If we can't see through it, light can't pass through the object either. So this is an example of an opaque object, and we know it's opaque because if I put it in front of my face, you can't see my face anymore, right? You can't see my eyes, my nose, or my lips because the plushie is blocking my face. And because there is no light passing through this plushie, we cannot see through it either. So that is an example of an opaque object, an object that does not let any light pass through it. Then we have a transparent object. And so in order to show you what this looks like, I have prepared a piece of plastic. So this piece of plastic is transparent because it lets all of the light that passes through it go through. And how do we know this? Because you can see my face. You can see my face through the object, you can see my hand through the object, you can see my shirt through the object. You can see right through this piece of plastic, and that means that all the light that hits it can also pass straight through the plastic, meaning that this object is transparent because it lets all of the light that hits it pass through. And then we have a translucent object. I have another piece of plastic to help demonstrate this, but this is a translucent piece of plastic. And translucent means that it only lets some of the light through. It doesn't let all of the light through, but it does still let a little bit of light through. And we can see this best because if I put this translucent piece of plastic over my shirt, you can see that I'm wearing a red shirt, and you can kind of see that there are white letters on my shirt, but you can't really read the letters. You can't really see the details of my t-shirt. Same thing if I hold it up to my face, you can kind of see that there is a face there and that the face has red hair. You can kind of see those things, but you can't see all the details of what my hair actually looks like or what my face actually looks like. So this is a translucent piece of plastic because it lets some of the light through, but not all of the light through. And if I were to compare this transparent piece of plastic to this translucent piece of plastic, you can see if I hold it up to my shirt, you can see that the transparent piece of plastic right here, you can see straight through it. You can see that my shirt says Jumpstart, Children First. You can see the fact that my shirt is red. You can see all of these little details through the transparent piece of plastic because it lets all of the light through. But with this translucent piece of plastic, you can only see that my shirt is red, and you can see a little bit of that there is some writing and that it's white, but you can't really read the writing. You can't see all the details. Same thing if I hold it up to my face. So if I hold it up to my face, here on this side with the transparent piece of plastic, you can see my eye, you can see half of my nose, half of my mouth, but you can't see all of those details through this translucent piece of plastic on this side right here. So this transparent piece of plastic lets through all of the light, which allows you to see all of the details of my face, but translucent objects only let some of the light through, so you can see some of the things behind the plastic, but you can't see all of the very fine details. So that is the difference between opaque, transparent, and translucent objects. And you might be thinking, why did I bring this up? Why is this so important to our discussion about shadows? Well, that is because shadows are made when something blocks light. Can anyone remember which one of our objects completely blocks light and doesn't let any light pass through? Can anyone remember? Oh, I think it was the opaque object, right? So our little plushie doesn't let any light pass through at all, which is why you can't see through it at all. So our opaque object blocks all of the light that is hitting it, and that is why you can't see through it. But if an object blocks all of the light, or even some of the light that is hitting it, that is how we get a shadow. So a great example of this is if I hold up this plushie to my shirt, you can see that right behind it, there is a dark shadow forming, right? Oh, well, let me go this way, yeah. So you can see that there's a shadow forming right behind the plushie. You can see that there is an outline or a silhouette that is being formed right behind the plushie. And that's because this little plushie is blocking all of the light that is trying to hit my shirt. And because there is no light hitting it, we can only see a dark spot that is left behind by the outline of our object. So that is how shadows work. If an object blocks light, that means that we're going to have a shadow. If it blocks a little bit of light, we're still going to have a shadow. But if it doesn't block any light at all, we're probably not going to have a shadow at all. But in order to test this, I brought a few objects with me so that we could truly see how this works. So I'm going to sit on the floor so that you can see all of this better. And I'm going to change my camera angle a little bit, but I will be right back, so don't go anywhere. Okay, I am back and I'm now on the floor because I wanted to show you against a blank wall what shadows look like. You can actually see my shadow right there, right behind me. You can see this outline of my face and a little bit of my hair. It's just an outline. You can't actually see the details of what I actually look like, but you can see my outline or my silhouette as a shadow on this wall. But I wanted to show you, before we get into our fun guessing game that I have, I wanted to show you what shadows look like for the objects that we have already talked about. So if you remember this little plushie, if I hold it up against the wall that I have here, and I also have a flashlight prepared. Well, I'm using my phone because I don't have a flashlight, but I have a flashlight prepared, and if I shine this flashlight on this plushie, you will see that there's a shadow formed right behind the plushie. Can you see that? It is a dark shadow right behind the plushie. And that is because this plushie was opaque, right? It blocks all of the light that is hitting it. So because it blocks the light, we get an outline or a silhouette or a shadow that is a very dark shadow on this wall. And you can see just how dark it is from how dark the outline is. So this opaque object has a very, very dark shadow. Now we also had our transparent piece of plastic, right? And this lets through all of the light. So my friends, I'm wondering, what do you think will happen to the shadow of this piece of plastic? Do you think it's going to have a very dark shadow, a light shadow, or no shadow at all? Well, let's find out. So if I hold up this piece of plastic to this wall and I shine my flashlight on it, oh, where's the shadow? Where'd it go? You can kind of see an outline around the plastic. You can kind of see it, but it's very, very, very light. It's almost as if there's no shadow at all. That's because this piece of plastic, as we said, is transparent, which means it lets through all of the light that hits it. And now let's look at our translucent piece of plastic that we talked about. Do you think this one's gonna have, just as a reminder, the translucent piece of plastic only lets through some of the light. It doesn't let through all of it, but it does let a little bit through. So do you think it's gonna have a dark shadow, a light shadow, or no shadow at all? Let's find out. So I have my piece of plastic here, and I'm going to shine my flashlight. Oh, I think we have a light shadow. So you can see that the edges of this piece of plastic have a light shadow around them. It's not super dark, so if I compare it to our plushie that's opaque, it's not super dark like this one, right? But you can still see that there is a shadow behind it. It's just much lighter than the one from our opaque object. So our translucent object has a light shadow. So it has a very light shadow because it lets some of the light through, but not all of it. So now I have 3 more objects prepared for you, and I'm going to have you guess. Just shout out your guess as soon as you're ready to guess. I'm going to have you guess if the object is going to have a dark shadow, a light shadow, or no shadow at all. And think about the fact that opaque objects have a dark shadow, translucent objects usually have a light shadow, and transparent objects have no shadow at all. So keep that in mind while you take your guess. So our first object is this little diary. Do you think this diary will have a light shadow, a dark shadow, or no shadow at all? Well, let's find out. Let me shine my flashlight on it, and oh, would you look at that? We have a dark shadow. Very, very dark shadow that's formed behind this diary. And that's because this diary is opaque. No light is passing through it. How about this piece of plastic? Do you think it will have a light shadow, a dark shadow, or no shadow at all? Let's find out. So I'm going to put this plastic right here and shine my flashlight on it, and oh, look at that. It looks like this piece of plastic, this little lid that I have here, has a blue shadow. Can you see that? It has a little bit of a blue shadow. And this one is much lighter than the dark shadow we just saw from the opaque diary, but there is still some sort of a shadow. So it's a much lighter shadow, but it is also blue. Isn't that interesting? So for this one, we end up seeing a light shadow because this object is translucent. This lid is translucent, and it lets through some of our light. And last but not least, I have this little tape dispenser right here that is made of transparent plastic. So do you think this tape dispenser will have a light shadow, a dark shadow, or no shadow at all? Let's find out. So I'm going to put this up against my wall and then shine, I just want to turn around this way, shine my flashlight on it and oh, look at that. Look at that. So it looks like it has a little bit of a shadow, and the shadow is where the plastic is very thick. So I think because the plastic is thick, it's very, very hard for light to pass through the really thick parts of plastic. But all of the parts that are really thin, they don't have a shadow at all. You can just see the color of the wall. There is no darkness in those little parts. You can just see the color of the wall behind it. So this object, because it is transparent, because it lets all of the light through, this one has almost no shadow at all. Okay, so now that we learned all about shadows and how shadows are formed, and now that we learned that there are three types of objects, we have opaque objects, transparent objects, and translucent objects, now we can have a little bit of fun with our shadows and with our silhouettes. So in the next video that you're going to watch, Miss Bonnie has prepared a very exciting guessing game for you all. So she will be showing you what an object's shadow looks like. And then you have to guess what the object is. Isn't that so exciting? I'm very excited. I really want to go watch Miss Bonnie's video too. So go ahead and make sure to watch her video after this one. And thank you so much for joining me today and learning about shadows with me. Bye-bye!